A word to describe rivalry week: emotional. That was college football, and this is Coast to Coast presented by Campus2Canton.com. Anarchy in Ann Arbor, Bama taken to the brink. Bedlam just finished. What's going to happen with Lincoln Riley? But I need you to do two things for me. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications. This is going to be our last show for the year, but we are still going to be going live with all sorts of content over at Campus2Canton.com. Jump in the chat. Let us know where you are watching from. But we're going to start this show the same way we start every show, with the rundown. Let's get into the game. Matthew Bruning. Ohio State at Michigan. Snow flurries. Michigan rushes for 279 yards, led by Hassan Haskins. 28 carries, 169 yards, 5 touchdowns. I said early on that if Michigan could start off with the lead and put some pressure on CJ Stroud, let that front four do what it couldn't do, then they could win this game. And that's exactly what happened. They jumped out to the lead. Aiden Hutchinson becomes the all-time sack leader at Michigan with 3 sacks. You got to give it to the Michigan Wolverines. You got to give it to Jim Harbaugh. They pretty much just ran the ball down Ohio State's throats, and we hadn't seen Ohio State give up rushing yards like that since Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, the game plan that Michigan had this week was what Michigan State should have had with Kenneth Walker. We talked a lot about that last week. I know, we talked a lot and gave you a lot of props that you said to sit Kenneth Walker last week. This is exactly what I thought they were going to do. And Hassan Haskins was a beast today. 169 yards, 5 touchdowns. I've been talking about it all year, and so I wasn't really not that surprised the game went the way that it did. This defense has not really been good. If you really go and look, they put up and were good against teams that were not that talented or not toward the top of the Big Ten. And even on offense, they put together a lot of their stuff against poor teams. I mean, Michigan State, I think that was a recipe for disaster because of how bad that secondary was, but I think the fact that Kenneth Walker couldn't get running on the ground, it's what allowed Ohio State to keep hitting him with those big strikes, which we didn't see Michigan do. Michigan bled those clocks with those run plays. I mean, they averaged, 6-something a carry or something like that? Like, they couldn't stop him, and Cade McNamara didn't even have to throw the ball. I mean, I don't even know what his stats were. He was 13 for 19 for 159 yards. I mean, once he threw that interception, it was like Jim Harbaugh and that offense like, no, we're just running the ball because it's been effective. I mean, I can't say much negatively about Stroud. I think overall he did play a decent game here. 394 yards, had the 2 touchdowns. He looked shaky in moments, but I would also say it's kind of hard not to when you have Hutchinson and Jabo playing the way that they did. And you just mentioned Hutchinson, now the all-time sack leader at Michigan. Not even that. Dude jumped up into now a Heisman favorite. He had no Heisman odds coming into this game. After that game, he jumped up to, I think, the 3rd favorite now to win the Heisman. I believe he jumped Kenneth Walker. So, I mean, he's having an amazing season. We talked a little bit this morning, you and Brandon, on the tailgate. They lost Harry Miller a couple weeks ago. I think that's kind of hurt that offensive line. You know, Henderson had a decent game here, 74 yards on the ground, 54, got a touchdown in both. And the wide receivers, I thought, played a decent game as well. JSN, Wilson, and Olave. But I think it was really that defense. As bad as that offense looked at times, I don't know that you can put this game on Ohio State's offense. Outside of the 2 red zone stops where they went for field goals, you know, there wasn't really any turnovers. I thought the offense looked good, but that defense could not get a stop against Michigan when they needed to, and Harbaugh ran it down their throats. And I mean, props to them. You know, it's weird to say this because I really don't like being happy for anybody or anything involved with Michigan, but it was good to see Jim Harbaugh kind of get that monkey off his back, because I do think he's a good coach. And you can tell how much it mattered. I mean, it's, you know, I think it was a good friend of mine, Jared Watson, who tweeted this out. He's an Ohio State fan. He's like, we've been spoiled. We have. I mean, it's been a good 10-year run. We didn't expect it. It happened, and it's kind of weird sitting on the other side of the fence, but it is good for Michigan, I think, to get that. It makes the rivalry, because now next year, that game's going to have even more meaning. So it sucks to be on the losing end of that, but it was such a great game, too. It was insane. And as Colin mentioned in the chat there, the snow, like, that made that game so much better. I wish it had been a little bit closer, but I mean, it was a great game.
Ohio State has now failed to beat Michigan 2 years in a row. If I am a Heisman voter, I'm considering Aiden Hutchinson.
No, sir. No, sir. I will mute you really quick. That is not true. Michigan backed out of that game last year.
That is true. That is a factually accurate statement. And Davis, I want all defensive linemen in New York for the Heisman. Maybe let Bryce Young be there, but Hutchinson, Davis, and Will Anderson should absolutely be there. This is a year where they could do that. Alabama at Auburn, the Iron Bowl, Matt. This one was close. I think that if Brian Harsin could have taken a gamble or two here or there, that Auburn could have actually won this game and put Alabama absolutely out of the playoffs. Jameson Williams goes out on a targeting penalty. This game was a very low-scoring game, even though Bryce Young had over 300 yards passing. John Mechie, I think 150 yards receiving after Williams goes out. But another defensive struggle here. I need to give credit to Roger McCary. Senior cornerback Roger McCary. He was causing problems for Alabama receivers all day in man coverage and was doing an excellent job breaking up passes without interfering. He ends up giving up the 2-point conversion at the end of the game to John Mechie, but he was just outstanding all day, and you win some, you lose some. In the first overtime, Brian Harsin, you've got a quarterback, TJ Finley, who can't even walk. You score a touchdown. You have the 2-point conversion. You have the momentum right there. You can go for the 2-point conversion and end the game. Instead, you decide to go for one. I thought that was a really poor decision. There were other times where he could have gone for the win, and he simply didn't. Also, I mentioned Will Anderson, another monster game for him. He is leading the country in sacks, I believe. But Alabama moves on, and it brings us to the showdown next week that we all have been looking forward to, Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah, I will say before I put this game on Brian Harsin, I'm putting it on Tank Bigsby. All he had to do was go down, and that game's over. That runs off 40 seconds. They go in there at the point where, and I guess you are kind of nitpicking here a little bit, but the point where they got to the 40, or it was the 40 or 50 in the game, they would have only had 8 seconds left, not 48 seconds, which allowed them to then drive down and score. I know it may have been tough. It looked like he just realized way too late what was about to happen, and then he tried to stop himself, and he was already on the sideline, and Alabama's players pushed him out of bounds to get the clock to stop. If he just goes down right there, that runs 40 seconds off. I don't think Alabama wins, but I think we've got to talk about Bryce Young. I mean, I know through 3 quarters he was not having a good game, but it matters that he brought them back and won this game. I've been saying all along, I think he should have ended up winning the Heisman. He's been doing what C.J. Stroud has been doing without the weapons. Say what you want. I mean, Jameson Williams has been amazing this year, but I do think it's fair to say he's not JSN, Garrett Wilson, or Chris Olave, and Bryce Young's still putting up those stats with just Jameson Williams there. So I think with that performance right there, if he goes in and plays at least a decent game against Georgia, he's likely going to end up winning the Heisman, so good for him. And it's going to – not only is it bring into a massive game for the SEC championship, but I think a lot of playoff implications, because if they beat Georgia, I think they're both getting into the playoffs. And if they only lose by, say, a field goal as time expires, I do think there's an argument that they'll make it in, especially with Ohio State losing. I mean, Michigan likely jumps up into their place at least to 3, if not to 2. What does that do with Cincinnati? Oklahoma State winning? I've been saying for the past couple weeks they have a chance to get in. Okay, yeah, it makes things very interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if was that a 99-yard drive that Bryce Young ended regulation in to get them into overtime. As you said, I mean, he did not have a great game throughout, but he was dodging a lot of pressure in the backfield trying to make plays, and they just weren't there. But he did it when it counted, and I think that is going to be very impressive for coaches when it comes time for NFL draft, because I mean, you just have the poise to drive him right down. Go ahead.
I 100% agree with you, Colin. 100% agree. I mean, both. Well, maybe not yours right now, but I mean, I just don't think Stroud's a big-time quarterback. I've been saying it all year. Been getting hated on for it, too. He struggles in the big moments. Anyways, continue, Felix.
Bedlam just ended, and there might have been some actually, we're not going to say that there were some distractions. 33-37, Oklahoma State takes it. Oklahoma had a chance at the end. Caleb Williams, I mean, again, talking about last-minute drives, he essentially runs the length of the field towards the ends of regulation to give them a chance. They just can't punch it in. But this game had a little bit of everything. You had muff punts. You had a kick return for a touchdown. Caleb Williams, 20 for 39, 252 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I've gotten on Lincoln Riley about running the ball, and he ran the ball today. 44 attempts, 189 yards, led by Kennedy Brooks, 22 carries for 139 yards. Caleb Williams had 19 for 36 on his own, but they are still not running Caleb Williams out of designed runs for some reason. Over on Oklahoma State, give it to Mike Gundy. Last year, before the season, with the rift between he and Chuba Hubbard, there was some concern that Mike Gundy could be on the outs, about him not getting along with certain players in that locker room and certain alumni. But he has Oklahoma State on the verge of a playoff berth. Spencer Sanders, 19 for 30, 214 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, but also did pace the Cowboys in rushing with 93 yards, 1 touchdown. Jalen Warren, 17 carries for 56 yards. I like Tay Martin. Is it Tay Martin? Is it Tay or is it T? Tay. Tay Martin is someone that I'm going to be paying attention to come NFL draft time. I think he's a day 3 pick that I'm going to have rostered in a lot of places. Continues to make big plays when it counts. It's just that Oklahoma State offense hasn't been as exciting as in years prior. So, some shakeup, Matthew, today after Bedlam and with Ohio State going down. It's a matter of who's going to be the 4 in the playoff.
Yeah, it's been a chaotic Week 13. It's been a chaotic college season. We talked a lot about it coming into the year, right? We knew those top guys, all those top quarterbacks were leaving, and we talked all year, all preseason about it. How much was it going to shake up college football? Bama seems to still be Bama, even though they've got the 1 loss. Clemson faltered. Ohio State has lost 2 games, which hasn't happened in over a decade. It's been a crazy season, and Oklahoma State capped it off today. And good for them. Good for Mike Gundy, as you mentioned. I believe he was 2-16 or something like that against Oklahoma. He's never actually won a Big 12 championship game. He's won the Big 12 championship once before they had the championship game. He now gets a chance to do that going up against Baylor, which should be a decent game, but I would think they're favored to win that. I think that defense can slow down Baylor, and that offense showed a little bit tonight against Oklahoma. That was my biggest thing. When we picked that game this morning, I thought that it was going to be a much closer game or lower scoring game, and I didn't think that Oklahoma State was going to be able to keep up with Oklahoma's offense, and they did, and good on them. It was really good to see. I'm excited to see what this means moving forward if they can get that win against Baylor, because they're going to have a lot of cachet now with the big win against Oklahoma, and then again, if they're able to win the Big 12 championship.
Well, let's jump into the headlines here, and we've alluded to it, but the playoff picture, I mean, it's really taking form. Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and Cincinnati had been the top 4, with Michigan and Notre Dame rounding out 5 and 6. You have to believe Ohio State is going to at least be 6. And I don't know if Cincinnati will simply move up to 3 and Michigan to 4. What do you think is going to happen there?
I think with Bama, the biggest thing is I want to see how they seed Bama and Michigan. I think Cincinnati stays at 4. I don't think they'll move them. But Michigan they were sitting at 5, so they were just outside, and they beat the number 2 team in the nation, and soundly as well. That was a big win where Bama struggled against Auburn, which granted, I've talked a lot about it the past couple of weeks. They've lost the previous 2 times they've gone to Auburn for the Iron Bowl, but they were also missing Bo Nix. They had a backup quarterback in there, and let's just be honest, Bama has struggled to really separate themselves all season. They've had, when they play these good games or these good teams, they struggle with them. In my opinion, Michigan should move to 2. They beat the number 2 team soundly. Georgia out there dropped a 40-something burger on Georgia Tech. Wasn't even close. I think Georgia stays at 1. Michigan goes to 2. You keep Alabama at 3 and Cincinnati at 4. I think Notre Dame probably moves up to Notre Dame is a great win. They beat Stanford. Colin, get out of here. That is not a great win. But Notre Dame moves up to 5, and I think Oklahoma State is probably now sitting at 6. The biggest thing is obviously going to come down to next weekend when Georgia and Alabama play each other. Go ahead.
I just don't see the committee letting Alabama in with 2 losses, and I think that's going to mean, are we going to have Georgia, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Cincinnati in the playoffs? Is that what we're looking at?
So that's where things are interesting, right? I don't think Notre Dame's going to get in. If Oklahoma State wins, I think they're going to jump Notre Dame because the biggest thing that's going to affect Notre Dame is they're sitting at home next weekend. They're not playing a game. What is Oklahoma State doing? They're going out there and improving their resume. And what's Notre Dame's best win? Is it North Carolina where they beat them by 2 points? A North Carolina team that's now 6-6, I think, on the season? Because the only good team on their schedule they played is Cincinnati, and they lost to them. And I may be misremembering a Notre Dame schedule, but I don't remember anybody else on there that's a really good team that they have beaten. Oklahoma State now has beaten Oklahoma, who was a ranked opponent. And if they go out there and beat Baylor I think is 17 or 15 right now. They're probably going to move up a little bit in beating Texas Tech, or even if they stay at the same, that's another ranked win for Oklahoma State. I think it's going to be Oklahoma State. If Alabama, which I expect Alabama to lose to Georgia, if Alabama loses, I think Oklahoma State sneaks into that 4th spot, bumps Cincinnati up, which means we would get a very intriguing matchup, in my opinion, between Michigan and Cincinnati, and then probably a bloodbath between Georgia and Oklahoma State.
So Georgia, Cincinnati, Michigan, and Oklahoma State. I mean, we're definitely getting some new blood in the playoff this year. College football was great today. This is why you love college football. Let's talk about one other significant headline, Matt. And the rumors were circulating on Twitter today that Lincoln Riley held a team meeting even today, I believe, telling the players that they had nothing to worry about, that he was committed to the team for this season, but would not commit to the team beyond this season. The Twitter sleuths out there are showing that he is now being followed by a number of LSU coaches, the baseball coach, the basketball coach, staff there at LSU. The reports go as far to say it's a done deal for Lincoln Riley to go to LSU, and that at OU is going to pursue Josh Heupel. Now, that second part actually makes a lot of sense to me, given that Heupel is a former OU quarterback himself. But what are your thoughts on Lincoln Riley potentially packing up and heading to Baton Rouge?
It makes sense. I mean, we talked a little bit about this on the show. We didn't dive deep into it, but there's been rumors for a couple of weeks now, and I can't remember if it was on this or Debbie Debate. We discussed it a little bit, but to me, it makes sense. I mean, look, Oklahoma is a great program. I don't want to upset. I know there was a couple people in our Discord who were getting a little upset with me saying this. I'm not trying to disparage Oklahoma. They're a good program. They've made it to the playoffs multiple times. They have 2 Heisman winners in the past 7-8 years. But they're not LSU. LSU is an elite program when everything is rolling right. Would you say that right now, with Lincoln Riley's tenure at Oklahoma, they've had everything rolling right? He's been getting them. They've been close to double-digit wins every single year. He's done a good job in recruiting, but they've never really gotten over the hump. LSU is a hotbed when it comes to recruiting, and they're a hot name. When you get a guy like Lincoln Riley in there, you get the right defensive coordinator in there to run, because we know Lincoln Riley's not going to run the defense. You're going to get prospects and players that you just can't get at Oklahoma, because LSU is a brand name. It is an elite tier school when that is running right. We saw it with Ed O, right? And granted, it came right off a national championship. They got guys they probably had no business getting in those recruiting classes, built it up, and then he just didn't do a good job of keeping everything together. I don't think that happens with Lincoln Riley. Now, granted, that comes with some added extra pressure. You've got to win. He's not going to get 10 years there if he's not winning every single year and doing it. But I think if he takes the teams that he's had right now at Oklahoma to the SEC, I think they're maybe the 4th or 5th best team. Like, they're not going to win the way I think he can if he was building these teams in LSU. I think he could compete with the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world, because I think he can bring that offense in there. And if he gets, again, the right defensive coordinator, where they're going to get those elite defensive players in that, especially in that state of Louisiana, you know all those kids are going to be excited with Lincoln Riley coming there. You're going to get some recruits that you can't get at Oklahoma, and I think that matters, because we've seen having that talent matters. Those blue chip prospects, I can't remember who it is. I think it's someone at CBS, or maybe it's at 24/7 Sports, does like a blue chip prospect report thing that talks about like how many of these guys have like high end, and it's the teams that usually make the playoffs. Granted, it may be very different this year, but typically the teams that make the playoffs and win the national championship have a ton of those top end 5 and 4-star recruits. You're going to just be able to get more of those guys, in my opinion, at LSU than you can at Oklahoma.
This is something we need to follow up on, Debbie Debate, because just thinking off the top of my head, at past Oklahoma recruiting classes from the offensive side. Think about Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams. This year, Mario Williams. Next year, the two running backs that are the top 5 running backs in their class. I mean, it's not like Lincoln Riley's not getting recruiting talent to OU, and to assume that he'd be able to do that much better at LSU just by virtue of his name cachet or what have you, I don't know. That's just a stretch for me. I mean, Oklahoma is a good program, and I don't know that LSU presents greener pastures. So I'm going to disagree with you there.
I'm not talking about the offensive side. I'm talking about on the defense. I think he can get better prospects in there defensively because those – let's just be honest, and I don't think this is true, but the SEC is the best. That's what they tell you. That's what they constantly promote. Everybody thinks that. You're going to be able to get
that would be the reason why I'd want to stay at Oklahoma is that the Big 12 is, he can do all of the offensive stuff that he wants to, and he's not going to get a lot of resistance. I mean, the fact that he has to face stiffer competition at LSU is why it's questionable to me.
He's going to the SEC in 2 years, though, and I think the difference with that is my biggest thing when I look at the recruiting is you're right. Right now, he's getting all those guys, but does that change if it goes to the SEC where all of a sudden, he's there and he may not be winning 10, 11, 12 games a year because it's going to take a year or two, in my opinion, to be competitive in the SEC. How many recruits do you lose now because you're not winning games? Where if he goes to LSU, I mean, we saw what they just won today against Texas A&M with a team that, they're not really being coached. While they don't have a lot of talent, Lincoln Riley goes there. He immediately, I think, bolsters the recruiting class that they're going to get because players want to go play with him. And again, I think defensively, you're going to be able to get players to go there because Louisiana produces a ton of great talent as it is. And those guys are like, oh, hey, now we're going to have an offense because you're going to look at that as I don't know that they'll be this good, but the Joe Burrow, Joe Brady offense type, right? Like, oh my God, we're actually going to have a good offense with Lincoln Riley coming here, bring in some defensive recruits and a defensive-minded coordinator, or you're going to have a good defensive coordinator. It's going to completely change that team. Now, Big 12 doesn't care about defense. Alex Grinch, he can't get those top-end defensive players, so there's only so much you can do.
All right. Well, once that news breaks that Lincoln Riley has gone to LSU, if it does happen, we'll have more to talk about somewhere on some platform. So, all right, Matt, before we go into the players overall, do you want to do the video or do you want to do the players first?
Yeah, we can. You want to do the video? I can just add it right now.
So I'll let you go ahead and tee it up.
All right. So if you guys watched Tailgate this morning, we put together little highlights from season 1. I didn't do the thank you part, so I'll just say this live. Thank you so much to everybody who's tuned in. For those of you who may not know, it's very late for some of us, so the fact that a lot of you guys stay up with us, jump in the comments, it means a lot to us. So this will be, as Felix mentioned at the beginning, the end of season 1 for us at the Tailgate. So here are some of the highlights and the special guests that joined us throughout the season to help us make this show such a success.
People are saying, and I think that Clemson does pull it out. So in terms of how the game would actually affect the season.
Small sample size with the DJ right now. And we need to remember he's still growing as a quarterback. So right now he's not processing. I think that's the number one thing we need to look for.
Think about this team a couple years ago. Nico Collins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Zach Charbonnet. And he could do nothing with that offense.
Let's bring in Jeff Bell. Jeff, football guy, staff, Debbie Lee at Fantasy Pros, co-host of the Debbie Royale. You know him at For Whom J Bell Tolls on Twitter.
For everyone, it doesn't matter if you're a first-time starting quarterback or if you're Emory Jones. Like I mentioned earlier, Emory Jones had a better day than I expected, and I don't know that this outcome is any different if he starts because.
Let's welcome in Adam Lewis. Adam, longtime Debbie analyst, our Florida Gators insider. You can find him at ADM Lewis on Twitter.
Yards in a TD and looked, like he was the tight end that's probably going to get most of the production for Penn State, at least this season.
I really thought it kind of put a nail potentially in his coffin for the NFL draft. I think it was actually a little more dire than both Colin and John kind of gave
against Louisiana. Let's welcome in Kane Fassell to talk about from one backfield situation to another. Of course, he is the co-host of the Devy Marketplace. You can find him at Devy_Kane. And he's also a big-time Gophers fan. It's Coast to Coast presented by Campus2Canton.com. We are absolutely loaded for you tonight, covering everything in week 1 of college football. But I need you to do 2 things for me. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn.
Yeah, Austin likes touting the guys who the 5-star guys and the guys towards the top of the recruiting rankings. Austin doesn't like to dig and tout too many guys lower on there. All right, go ahead, take it.
Good riddance. All right. How's it going tonight, Kevin? Thanks for joining us here again tonight. You are going to be doing a weekly segment here for us, our West Coast, our left coast check-in. Sorry, should I say, since you live out there in California. So how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. It's only 8:48. I can watch more games. That's why the West Coast time zone is the best, and I will stand by that.
I'm at 5'11", 200. I just put Brandon Thomas, I believe, ahead of Zach Evans. And that's, if I had to draft today, that is where I would take him. He's 17% owned on Fantrax. There are 3 tiers that I put in the waiver wire. I can't even remember what they are right now. But Brandon Thomas would absolutely blow he would just be a by any means necessary, get him on your roster if he is out. He's a top 15 running back in Devy. And I don't know that that's going to be controversial in 2 weeks.
It will still be controversial in 2 weeks. It still will. Just let you know.
Okay.
Said something there.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think it will be. I mean, he's a damn good player.
We know. You just said that like all nonchalantly. I've moved him ahead of Zach Evans. Like, you saw the rest of us all kind of like, what? So yeah, that's fine. You're allowed your takes. What are we doing next, Felix?
Let's
look forward and keep doing what we're doing.
ECU duo today. The two guys were really interested in there.
I want to elaborate on something I said earlier. I want to elaborate on something I said earlier. So
I said, I think that on the field it just moves too fast for him, as you see, as he ran out of bounds in an opportunity where you can't run out of bounds.
Well, it's probably
Brandon.
As I say, it's probably stock down for Joe Milton then. But look at that segue.
I'm sure he looked good. I like that Memphis office as a whole. I'm not moving him up over Zach Evans. We'll see what happens though.
I thought I was aggressive on my Brandon Thomas ranking. I
really
think
you have him like 60, right? Or 40, 20?
Yeah, like in the 50s. I thought I was being aggressive, but apparently that is not the case.
But just to go to your original question with TCU, yes.
Is this the end for DJU, folks?
No, I don't think so. First of all, anybody wondering why I'm wearing a bag, if you caught the morning show, I did stake my reputation on Treylon Burks on the over 89 receiving yard, over 89 and a half receiving yards. He had 89. Penn State losing today also did not help. I called Chris Moxley up, got his bag guy on the phone. They got me a nice one. But no, to answer your question, I don't think this is the end of DJU.
Around him. For those listening at home or listening to the replay on the podcast, Colin Decker is wearing a bag over his face that is too short, and it's showing off his double chin, and it says building character. So I wanted to paint the picture. He's got 2 eye holes punched out of this bag.
It just
which looks
it
very
looks
similar.
it looks so. It reminds me of the Django Unchained scene. If you guys know what I'm talking about. Where they're just complaining about the bags not fitting right. Like it's so bad. It's just so bad.
One of the more underrated cameo appearances in modern film history. I think that's Jonah Hill in that scene.
It is. There's a lot of very famous people in that scene, but yeah, it's Jonah Hill.
Apologize, Matt. I thought that the CJ Verdell stuff would be too painful for you. I did not think you would go into that well.
If I don't talk about it, I can't get over it. So we just got to keep talking about it.
Yeah, you must have a really good therapist. Yeah,
he's going to talk to us a little bit about what Jim Harbaugh has done to develop talent at Michigan during his tenure.
That's not what we're going to talk about. Jarek is going to talk about Kyle McCord and Quinn Ewers and what happens when QBs don't play earlier. That was.
I thought that was
You
this
just
morning.
don't understand.
These action game. If you are not in a Campus to Canton league, you need to be in one because it makes these games more fun. When you have a Tavon Randolph, who no one is talking about, go off in your starting lineup for 309 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that guy's a freshman. Tavon Randolph absolutely went off, like putting up video game numbers. He had the most receiving yards this season. And Austin, you talked about him on our show last week or the week before about guys.
Few moments later.
And no one is talking about Tavon Randolph because his real name is Trayvon Rudolph. Matt Bruning, anybody stock up or stock down? I couldn't make it through. I tried to not laugh. Oh, I couldn't do it.
So that'll be it for me at headlines, guys. Thanks for letting me take over the show. Now I believe I don't know who's hosting Left Coast with Kevin, so I'm just going to let whoever behind the scenes handle that one. I'm just going to disappear.
It's panel time. Matt, come back. Don't leave me. I love you. How about this? Does this bring you back?
Ooh. Matthew Boohoo Bruning. It does. I'm back. Why am I boohooing? I'm sorry.
You seemed really worked up about Cincy. Felix, are you doing?
Do I not get to be in here? What the hell is going on?
You're here.
You control. I thought you could control.
I
yourself.
just added myself in.
Yeah. Congratulations on.
Let's bring in the rest of the group here. Whoever's left, whoever is left here in the Campus to Canton team, bring everybody in. Hey, Brandon, Colin, I don't know where should we start. How about this? I'm going to throw it to the group. Anyone just jump in and answer. Do we owe Kyle McCord an apology after his performance today?
Yes, you do.
Oh man,
that's all I had to say, Austin. I can go back and win now. That's
okay. I said, Matt, do you want in?
Matt, go ahead, man. Why do we owe Kyle McCord an apology?
I could go and pull all the receipts if you'd like. Felix is never going to start a game. He's going to transfer by September. He's never going to throw a pass for Ohio State.
Season of the tailgate, first season of Coast to Coast. We had a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of fun next year. Let's before we get out of here, Matt, let's talk a little bit about some players. We always talk about players whose value changed that today, but let's talk about some players whose value changed on the season overall. Some of the biggest fluctuations in value. We'll go positive and negative. Do you want to start on the positive side?
Yeah, I'll save some of the guys that I know you've kind of touted that have really kind of blown up. Josh Downs, he was a guy we had a lot of questions about coming into this year. We weren't sure if he could carry that offense. I think it's safe to say he's worked himself into, if not a day one pick, a high-end day two pick when his draft comes up in 2023. I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention guys like Rasheen Ali and Seth Hennigan, who were not even drafted in C2C leagues. And by week 2, 2. Rasheen Ali was a big name. Seth Hennigan was probably closer to 4 or 5 when people really started picking up on him. And then I got to mention Kenneth Walker. I think, coming into the season, there was not a lot of people who thought he was going to be able to do much of anything. There were people talking about him not even getting the starting job in that backfield. And then he's come out there and I think worked himself into, being at least the third running back off the board this year. He's likely going to be at least invited to the Heisman ceremony. He's just had an amazing season. He's really kind of shot his stock up in a major way.
Yeah, I mean, let's think back to the beginning of the season at Georgia, or even into the spring, where Brock Bowers was behind one Eric Gilbert and Darnell Washington, both of whom Eric Gilbert a projected, top 10, 15-ish pick at tight end, and Darnell Washington a potential first-round pick at tight end. Eric Gilbert leaves the program. Darnell Washington is injured, and Brock Bowers has been nothing but spectacular. I mean, you can question him, but he had a 70-yard touchdown today where he just pulled away from everybody. So he is definitely, I mean, he's gone from probably undrafted to being the tight end two overall in Devy and someone in C2Cs that you can actually start. Anthony Richardson, I think he just proved this year that he is the best athlete in the country. And one of the storylines that we're going to be tracking come this offseason is who does Florida hire and what are they going to do with Anthony Richardson? Does either Richardson or Emory Jones transfer? But Anthony Richardson still 3 more years of eligibility. Xavier Worthy, the freshman who was supposed to be at Michigan, leaves in the spring, says this is no, I don't think so. Goes to Texas and has been, again, spectacular, a deep threat for them. I think Deshaun Jackson was the comp for him for 24/7 Sports, and that actually works. And you got to save the best for last, Tyler Van Dyke. Tyler Van Dyke was one of my favorite players this offseason. I called him the next Joe Burrow. I thought he would have to transfer given that Jake Garcia was there. But it looks like not only is he going to be the starter going into the spring, going into next season, but he's someone that you have to seriously consider as a first-round candidate in 2023 if you had to take that 2023 draft right now. After Bryce Young, I'm not sure who else you would take or CJ Stroud, but Tyler Van Dyke would be right there for quarterback 3. To finish today, 34 for 49, 381 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he has had a few stinkers in there, but he has otherwise been spectacular. And again, this is his first season as a starter. Matt, we had some misses too, though. Some misses and some players whose value fluctuated negatively this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on the first 2 guys, but you can go deeper into them if you want. I mean, 2 Buckeyes that I thought were going to be good, especially Mookie Cooper. I thought him transferring to Missouri was going to be great. I don't even know that he's been on the field for more than 3 games. Obviously, G. Scott, I still think that the transition to tight end, if he sticks with it, can be good for him, but he hasn't been on the field a lot either. He's been injured. He wasn't at the game today. He's missed quite a couple of games due to injury. A guy that I was with Colin on and Hudson Card, I mean, I don't know that he even has value right now. Coming into the year, he was highly drafted, wins the job, plays good, and then played really bad, gets benched for Casey Thompson, and when he's come back in, he has not played good at all. I'm very curious to see where he transfers to next season and what happens with him because his stock is really kind of low. Another quarterback that a lot of people were hyping up, Caleb Ellaby. I think that, there was talks that he was supposedly going to get first-round draft capital coming into out of the season. I don't even know that he gets drafted right now. And then a guy that you just mentioned that I was very high on, I have him in a lot of places. I drafted him as a freshman, was Jake Garcia. You just mentioned it, Tyler Van Dyke. I don't see any way outside of injury that Van Dyke doesn't keep that job. So where does Garcia transfer? I don't think that he wants to sit for another season. It'll be interesting to see what happens too with Miami. They've just lost their offensive coordinator. I believe he took the SMU job.
Job, Rhett Lashley. That's right.
Yeah, so I don't know who comes in there, but even with the new coach coming in there, I think Van Dyke has proven how good he's been. He's not losing that job. So what happens with Jake Garcia? Where does he transfer to? So I think his stock has taken a pretty decent hit because he was at least a 3rd or 4th freshman quarterback coming off most boards this year.
The great thing about Card and Garcia is those guys could transfer to a soft landing spot, and because they become starters, their value automatically jumps. takes a jump in value. And Garcia looked good in the spring game. He just wasn't healthy enough to take over for De'Aaron King when De'Aaron King went out for the season. So Daniel Jackson was a player that I gravitated towards. It was apparent that he was going to be in that slot, that position previously held by Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson, and there was going to be all sorts of fantasy goodness for him. Daniel Jackson only had 20 catches for 222 yards this season. Still technically a freshman because you retain the eligibility that you had last year, so he still has 3 years to develop. And he could turn it around, but he was not good this season. I thought, especially given how athletic he is, he was one of the more athletic wide receivers in that 2020 wide receiver class. Jalen Berger thought that what Braylon Allen was, that could potentially be Jalen Berger. He's no longer with the team. I think he's still in the transfer portal.
Yep.
And Eric Gilbert, as I mentioned, Ajay Hall. I think that there's zero chance that Ajay Hall ends up in Alabama next season. He's already complained about his playing time. He tweeted that he wanted to quit. I don't see how he gets. He's not going to be in Tuscaloosa next year, and I actually included him in the article of potential transfers. You got another name?
Yeah, I will say, too, we should have mentioned Braylon Allen. That dude's probably seeing his stock rise more than some of the guys we just mentioned. Again, I don't even know that he was getting drafted. Yeah. Eric Gray, who we saw muff the punt tonight in Bedlam, a guy that I know most of us at the site were not super high on, but there were a lot of people talking about him being the best back in this class. I would say I hate saying stuff like this because I feel like I'm so negative, and in my opinion, they're just kids because they're so much younger than I am. But I don't even know that he gets drafted. He has had such a bad season. He can't transfer again because he's used his one-time free transfer. I don't know that Kennedy Brooks is going to leave. So then what happens in Oklahoma? He's kind of just stuck in a really bad situation in Oklahoma. So I think his stock is probably one of the biggest ones we've seen drop down as well, that I don't see any way in recovering, like you talked about a Garcia and a Card and even a Hall. Hall could transfer somewhere and be the wide receiver 1 next year, and immediately his stock's rebounding. Outside of Kennedy Brooks leaving or getting hurt, I don't know that Gray's going to be able to rebound his stock. So he took a massive hit this year.
Well, not only that, but OU brings in 2 top 5 running backs in Raleek Brown, and I can't remember the other guy.
Gavin Sawchuk.
Yeah, there you go. Next year. So, and Lincoln Riley has been active in the transfer portal when it comes to running back. So, Eric Gray might have to go play cornerback or something like that. All right. Any other players, Matthew?
Nope, that's it. That's all I've got.
That is going to be our last show for the year for the tailgate. I want to thank Matthew for being the producer that he is behind the scenes, getting us together with the music and the overlays. Kevin Coleman, who joins us every week for the Left Coast, and then obviously all of the folks at Campus to Canton who take their time to do this show. Austin, Colin, Brandon, anybody else I'm forgetting, Matthew?
Let's see. Who else jumped on here? Mike was on
Chris
here for an
Moxley,
episode. We had Will.
Jarek.
Will came on for a couple times. So, yeah.
Will and Jarek Backus for putting and congratulations to Jarek Backus, who just had a baby. So, all right. I think that is it for us. We're going to be paying attention to championship week. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to continue pumping out content into the off season. Of course, all of the podcasts continue to go on throughout the year. But for Matthew and myself, that's it.